imagine walking into a dead silent conference room.
Yeah.
And instantly you feel this physical weight pressing against your chest.
Oh, right. Like way before anyone has even opened their mouth.
Exactly. I mean, your heart rate ticks up, your stomach tightens, and society basically immediately tells you that feeling is a malfunction. You're being overly sensitive.
Oh, yeah. They say you're dysregulated.
Yeah, dysregulated.
Yeah.
But what if your body isn't malfunctioning at all? What if your nervous system is actually functioning as this like high resolution antenna, just picking up on a signal everyone else is desperately trying to ignore?
Mm-hmm.
So today we are plunging into two really profound pieces of writing by Dr. Jaime Hoerricks. And they explore this concept known as autistic gestalt perception.
This is a huge concept.
It really is. And the mission of this deep dive is to fundamentally challenge how you, the listener, view emotional boundaries, sensitivity, and, well, the very concept of the self. We're asking a massive question today. Are you really an isolated individual, or are you just a porous node in a shared emotional field?
Wow, yeah.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Because modern therapy constantly tells us that a healthy mind is a well-defended fortress.
Right, absolutely.
Like you build your walls, you guard your peace, you keep what's yours, and block out what isn't. But what if that entire framework is just measuring the wrong thing completely?
What's fascinating here is that Dr. Hoerricks flips that foundational assumption totally on its head, and they do that by focusing on how autistic and gestalt-oriented people process the world.
Gestalt process.
Yeah. So a gestalt processor perceives the whole environment simultaneously before ever breaking it down into component parts.
Oh, so they get the big picture first.
Exactly. For them, a room is felt as an entire atmospheric climate long before the brain can, analyze the individual people sitting at the table.
That's wild.
And we're not talking about magical thinking here or some mystical aura reading. We're talking about the very real biological, material experience of relational atmospheres.
Yeah, like the physical stuff.
Yeah, tension arriving in the human body as literal physical pressure or static or just this sudden crushing exhaustion.
So the body basically registers the environment before the brain even has time to draft a polite, socially acceptable summary of it.
Exactly that.
But because society refuses to accept that emotions blend together in this physical way, it forces people to adopt a fundamentally flawed psychological model, which Dr. Hoerricks calls the wrong unit.
The wrong unit, yes.
Yeah, there's this really pervasive assumption out there that a person is a discrete, bounded container, like we're supposedly walking around with these internal customs checkpoints.
That's a great way to put it, customs checkpoints.
Right. Inspecting every feeling that comes up and declaring like, this emotion is mine, keep it, or that emotion is theirs, send it back across the border.
Dr. Hoerricks argues that if we look at the specific therapeutic vocabularies we use today, words like containment, self-regulation, or emotional differentiation.
Distress tolerance.
Yes, distress tolerance, all of them. They all rely on that exact assumption. They assume you are a sealed unit, just this solitary generator of your own internal weather.
Which is just not true for everyone.
No, especially not for an autistic person who registers the tension in a room metabolically way before language can intervene. That natural permeability is constantly labeled as a pathology. The world just tells them they're too porous, too enmeshed, just, too much.
It sounds like traditional therapy is trying to force a sprawling, chaotic weather system into a tiny piece of Tupperware.
Oh, I love that analogy, yes.
It's just the wrong shape entirely for what is actually happening. But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit on behalf of anyone listening who has spent, years in therapy.
Sure, go for it.
Isn't learning to separate your emotions from other people's emotions just a necessary part of growing up? Like, how is it a bad thing to know what belongs to you? If I don't build that boundary, aren't I just going to drown in everyone else's stress?
That's the classic fear, right? But Dr. Hoerricks suggests that our entire model of how emotions actually work in the human body might just be fundamentally flawed. Emotions do not originate from isolated generators inside each of us.
Okay.
Bounded self-frameworks fail because they try to flatten what is actually a continuous mutual influence into those isolated Tupperware units you mentioned. Just think about the physical mechanics of a shared space. Humans alter each other metabolically and rhythmically.
Wait, metabolically? How so?
Well, when two nervous systems are in a room together, heart rates can literally synchronize. Breathing patterns adjust to match one another, and we subconsciously mirror micro-expressions. We're physically communicating before language even starts.
Oh, wow. So we're literally syncing up.
Exactly. To insist that a person must compress All of that shared relational reality into a solitary container, it's asking them to ignore the biological reality of how nervous systems interact.
So the Tupperware model fails because the food is already mixed, the soup is in the bowl together, and you just can't unmix it.
Perfect, yes.
So if we accept that we aren't isolated containers, we really have to completely redefine what is happening when someone's nervous system absorbs the emotional weight of an entire room. Because, I mean, the traditional clinical term for this is hyperempathy, right?
Right, that's what you usually hear.
But the text points out that this is an incredibly imprecise label for what is actually biologically occurring.
It really is. The term hyperempathy frames the experience as a flaw of excess. It implies the person is over-identifying, or that their nervous system is just this defective, poorly calibrated instrument that's getting overwhelmed by too much feeling.
Like it's a glitch.
Exactly. But Dr. Hoerricks reframes this beautifully. It is not excess feeling. It is increased resolution.
Increased resolution.
Yeah, it's a highly accurate sensitivity to relational data. The nervous system isn't breaking down. It's perceiving the subtle shifts in atmospheric pressure, the tightening of jaws, the collective holding of breath.
Like upgrading from an old tube TV to a 4K screen. You aren't seeing like too much picture. You're just finally seeing the sharp details that were always there anyway.
Exactly. You see the meaning moving between bodies before speech formalizes it. Like how one terrified person in a room can completely reorganize the breathing patterns of everyone else in that space, even if nobody says a single word.
So what does this all mean for the person actually experiencing it? I mean, if my body isn't overreacting or dysregulated, it must be doing something purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like my nervous system is trying to solve a puzzle that my brain doesn't even have the pieces for yet. What exactly is it doing when it suddenly tightens up in a, seemingly normal, quiet staff meeting?
This raises an important question. Because what they are experiencing is a complex, multi-layered reality that society is trying to measure with really crude instruments. To use a different framing, it's like society is trying to measure deep ocean currents using a simple backyard rain gauge.
Oh, right. The tool is just entirely inadequate for the scale of the environment.
Precisely. When that nervous system tightens in the staff meeting, it is accurately perceiving the hidden currents. Maybe it's unsaid conflict between two managers or collective anxiety about upcoming layoffs. The paradigm shift Hoerricks proposes is moving away from the question,
Which feelings are yours?
Yes, moving away from which of these feelings are yours to a much more accurate question, which is, what are you accurately perceiving?
Wow.
It is a shift from ownership to provenance. We stop asking who owns the feeling and start asking where the feeling originated in the field.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because it's this high-resolution perception is actually incredibly accurate. Why is society so obsessed with suppressing it?
Right.
Like, why pathologize the person who notices the tension? It's like being a highly sensitive smoke detector in a factory where everyone has just collectively agreed to pretend there's no fire.
That is exactly what it feels like.
And when the alarm inevitably goes off because it senses smoke, the factory doesn't put out the fire. It blames the smoke detector for being too loud and tries to rip the batteries out.
Taking that smoke detector analogy further into the workplace, Dr. Hoerricks points out that the factory doesn't just ignore the alarm, it actively structures itself around pretending the smoke doesn't even exist. Dr. Hoerricks extends this critique into the modern professional world, arguing that capitalist structures rely heavily on the fantasy of atomized independence. The system functions most efficiently when people pretend they are completely unaffected by the emotional environment.
Right, the fantasy that we can all just leave our personal lives, our bodies, and our nervous systems at the door and become these emotionless cogs in a machine.
According to the text, modern workplaces are often built on profound contradictions that are felt physically but denied verbally.
Like what?
Well, you have smiles that carry palpable contempt, or you have corporate inclusion language that masks deeply extractive labor practices. Institutions constantly demand relational labor from their employees.
Oh, like asking for teamwork, emotional intelligence, synergy.
Exactly. But they completely refuse any relational accountability when the environment turns hostile. The emotional atmosphere itself becomes this unacknowledged political battleground.
So the nervous system of the autistic or gestalt-oriented person is acting like a sponge for all that unspoken toxicity. Just the stuff the official corporate narrative completely refuses to name.
Yes.
Like everyone says, we are a family here, But the atmospheric pressure of the room just screams, you are entirely replaceable.
And because they absorb that contradiction and react to it physically, they get pathologized. They are disciplined or sent to HR for responding to conditions that everyone else has merely learned to survive through dissociation.
Wow.
The permeable autistic body becomes a living indictment of the broken system. If one person physically reacts to the unspoken tension of the whole room, they expose the fact that everyone else is just adapting to a toxic, broken environment.
They expose the adaptation. Man, that is heavy.
It really is.
So if you are that smoke detector, and you are living in the factory that refuses to acknowledge the fire, how do you actually survive day to day? Because you can't just short circuit from the smoke, and you can't let them remove your batteries entirely.
No, you can't.
And, according to Dr. Hoerricks, the solution isn't to build harder, thicker psychological boundaries, right? The solution is developing something called field literacy.
Field literacy is the crucial developmental pivot in this framework. It's the capacity to read the relational atmosphere without collapsing into it, but also without numbing yourself to it.
So finding a middle ground.
Right. Instead of using courtroom logic, which obsessively cross-examines the self, asking things like, who is guilty of this feeling? Is it my fault I feel anxious? Did I cause this?
Oh, I've definitely done that.
We all have. But field literacy shifts to the logic of meteorology.
Meteorology. Okay, I love that. Instead of a judge banging a gavel, you become a weather forecaster tracking pressure systems. But how does someone actually do that in real time?
Picture sitting in that toxic staff meeting. Instead of internalizing the sudden chest tightness and thinking, I am having an anxiety attack, something is wrong with me, you shift your internal monologue. You ask, where did this emotional weather originate? How is it moving through the room? What conditions are amplifying it? You notice that the pressure spiked right after the regional manager walked in. You become a node learning the weather patterns of the network rather than a broken machine. But what's vital to understand is how this literacy develops over time. It relies heavily on what Hoerricks calls the archive.
The archive. Yes, let's dig into the mechanics of that, because this is where the lived experience really comes into focus. It doesn't happen linearly. It happens gestaltically.
Right.
The body notices a microclimate first. Like maybe you leave that specific meeting with a splitting migraine or a sudden sense of dread. But everyone in the room was smiling and using pleasant corporate jargon, so your brain tells you that you're just overreacting. But then, 3 days later, or maybe even 3 months later, the archive verifies your physical reaction. The company announces mass redundancies. Or the couple you had dinner with announces they're getting a divorce. The body knew the weather was shifting long before the mind had the concrete facts to prove it.
That's the archive in action.
But honestly, if I have to wait 3 days or 3 months for the archive to prove my nervous system was right, how do I function in the moment without feeling totally unmoored? That waiting period sounds incredibly exhausting.
The exhaustion you're describing is profound, but Dr. Hoerricks explains that the fatigue doesn't actually come from feeling the room.
Really?
No, the exhaustion comes from the massive cognitive labor of continuously gaslighting a nervous system that keeps being correct.
Oh, wow.
Think about the energy it takes to spend all day arguing against your own perception. I'm fine, they're fine, everyone was smiling, I'm just being too sensitive. That internal war is what drains you.
That makes so much sense.
Once you build that archive and consciously realize your body has a historical track record of accuracy, you can start fighting yourself. The relief comes when the nervous system ceases to be enemy territory.
You stop telling the smoke detector it's broken. You just say, okay, I smell smoke. I don't see the fire yet. I don't have the proof, but I trust the alarm. That is a massive paradigm shift. It gives you permission to just exist in your own reality.
Exactly.
But it does lead us to a really critical caveat in Dr. Hoerricks' work. Is the nervous system always right about the present moment? Because if you just blindly trust every single physical feeling as objective reality about the people currently in the room, isn't that a recipe for disaster?
The text is very clear on this danger. Permeability without discernment isn't field literacy, it's just flooding. While the shared emotional field is very real and very physical, so is something Hoerricks calls residue.
Residue. Meaning, like, the historical baggage, the stored trauma we all carry around in our bodies.
Yes. Dr. Hoerricks explains that trauma echoes forward biologically. The amygdala, the part of the brain that processes fear, is constantly matching current sensory input to past threats.
Right.
So, you might encounter a slightly harsh tone of voice in a meeting today, and that present signal mixes with historical residue. Instantly, your nervous system floods your body with cortisol because that one tone awakens the emotional memory of 10 older, much more dangerous rooms from your past.
Or like a disappointed expression from a friend activates an entire childhood of conditional acceptance.
Exactly. Field literacy requires deep interpretation and context. It is not about blind surrender to every feeling that washes over you.
See, I'm trying to square this with everything I've ever been taught about boundaries. If an old storm from my childhood is interfering with today's weather, isn't that exactly when I do need those traditional therapeutic walls to block it out?
Go.
Like if my past is hijacking my present, shouldn't I shut the gates?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of the Gestalt experience, it's still not about building a wall. It is about skillful participation inside a connection. The goal isn't to block the weather. The goal is to recognize what is a present storm and what is just an echo of thunder from 20 years ago.
Okay, I see.
When you feel that tightness, field literacy allows you to pause and ask, is this the room or is this the residue? It's about recognizing which signals actually require a behavioral response from you today, and which signals merely require you to witness them, to acknowledge the old pain without taking them on as present reality.
So you aren't isolating yourself in Tupperware. You are just learning how to navigate the continuous exchange of information without losing your footing.
You're learning the difference between this room is currently dangerous and this room simply reminds my body of a time when I was in danger.
That discernment is everything. It changes you from a passive victim of your environment into an active navigator. And I think it brings us to the profound emotional core of this entire deep dive, which is just relief.
Huge relief.
The absolute cellular relief of realizing that you were never broken for perceiving continuity where our culture insists there is only division.
It is a profound unburdening. For years, people, especially those who are autistic or gestalt-oriented, have carried the immense guilt of failing at a form of separateness that their nervous systems were biologically never designed to inhabit.
Yeah, they've searched endlessly for a missing wall that society insists should be there.
But the body, with all of its complexities, its false starts, its archives, and its echoes, was just trying to tell the truth the entire time. As Hoerricks states, you were never the unit.
You were never the unit. Why does this matter to you as you listen to this? I mean, even if you don't identify as autistic or gestalt-oriented, this framework completely flips how you can view your own workplace dynamics, your tense family dinners, and your own seemingly unexplained physical exhaustion.
It really does.
It gives you permission to finally trust the weather you're walking through. You aren't a defective container leaking emotions. You are a highly sensitive node in a vast, interconnected network.
It reclaims the body as a perceptive instrument rather than a behavioral problem. It invites all of us to be far more honest about the invisible environments we create, sustain, and force each other to live within.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive into Dr. Hoerricks' work, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, kind of extending this concept into our modern reality. If human nervous systems are this incredibly deeply attuned to a shared physical, emotional field like relying on synchronized breathing, pupil dilation, and atmospheric pressure, what happens when we move our lives almost entirely online?
That is a great question.
Right. Are our remote workplaces, our video calls with slight audio lags, and our endless text threads stripping away the subtle emotional weather we actually rely on to survive?
Yeah.
Are we leaving our high-resolution nervous systems starving for signal? Or are we just creating entirely new, unseen digital microclimates that our bodies haven't quite figured out how to archive yet?
Wow.
Just something to think about the next time you find yourself inexplicably exhausted after a 2-hour virtual meeting.
Yeah.
Keep your weather eye open.